welcome to this session on agriculture. My name is Tola Adeyemi, and I'll be your moderator for this session. I know that for many of you in the audience, this is the session that you've all been waiting for, and for good reason, because agriculture speaks to the very fundamentals of human existence. It's about food. It's about how do we feed ourselves as human beings. Now, they say a hungry man is an angry man. And we've all seen what the effects of hunger have had and how it could manifest within the wider population. Indeed, we cannot as a nation talk about economic development without addressing the issue of food and how do we feed and nourish our population. When you think about it on a macro level, agriculture is the biggest contributor to our gross domestic product. It's also the biggest employer of labor, but it's a sector that has attracted and continues to attract a lot of attention. We have seen some progress within this sector over the last couple of years, but it's a sector that's still beset with a number of challenges. So we have issues around our yields, where we see that our yields in Nigeria are still, comparatively speaking, some of the lowest in the African continent and indeed the world. Why is this an issue? It's an issue because of our population and the rate of growth of our population. The rate of growth of our population is outstripping the rate of growth of our agricultural output. We also have issues around storage. We have issues around transportation. We have issues around finance. We have issues around access to agricultural inputs. So it's a sector with a lot of issues. But as we have learned, where there are lots of problems, there are also lots of opportunities. So it's a sector with tremendous opportunities. And we're fortunate today to have a talented panel that will dimension these opportunities in greater detail. The topic we'll be discussing is opportunities for investors and aspiring entrepreneurs within the agriculture value chain. To my mind, if ever there was a sector in need of transformation, it's the agricultural sector. If ever there was a sector in which we could benefit from innovation and collaboration, it's the agricultural sector. So here we have a tremendously important part of our economy that's vital for our survival as a nation, that has problems, but also has huge opportunities. And we'll be dimensioning these opportunities today. So the way in which this session will run is as follows. We have 4 very talented speakers who will speak for 10 minutes each. After they finish speaking, we will open it up for questions, your questions. I anticipate that we will have approximately 40 minutes or so to really deal with the questions that you have. So this is a great opportunity for you to have the questions that are on your mind regarding agriculture answered by really talented speakers. So please use the chat box as much as possible, and we'll try and take as many of the questions as we can. So let's dive into it straight away. Our first speaker has a very interesting name. His name is African Farmer Mogaji.
Hello, Good afternoon. I thank God for this opportunity, and I thank the Kingdom Summit and the Redeemed Christian Church of God for this opportunity. I don't take it for granted when you come to speak to believers. Today, I'm asked to talk about opportunities for investors and aspiring entrepreneurs. And my presentation, my comments would be restricted around believers, because I believe most of the people here are believers. And so I would be a bit more spiritual. So first and foremost, I would say that the scripture says, except the Lord builds a house, they labor in vain that tries to build it. So there is, across the value chain in agribusiness, there is nothing you can think of that you cannot leverage the opportunity. When I say nothing, I mean nothing. I mean from Gary, we still bring in Gary from Ghana, and we bring in virtually everything and anything and along the value chain. So there's nothing you can think of. And however vague that is, it's as simple as that, because the fact is that the opportunities are there. So you can, if I log on to, yes. So where to invest? This picture just speaks to the value chain, from beekeeping to poultry. And when I say beekeeping, we most of us look at honey production, and honey is the least in terms of economic generating value chain in the bee. The venom is more expensive. That's the sting we run from. Pollination is huge in developing countries and developed countries. You can set up a business around just providing pollinating services. So when you have companies like Coca-Cola that use citrus, they sign agreements with farmers, and the farmers need the bees to pollinate the flower, because the flower, in about 3 days, if the bees doesn't pollinate, they lose their fruit. For every flower, you bring out fruit. For every fruit is profit to the farmer. So look at that value chain of this picture. You would get a lot. Like I said earlier, there's nothing you can think of that we don't need to develop. And I would come to, people say, how do you invest? How do I raise capital? For me, my experience is, because I hear this a lot, my experience is I would ask you to ask God. And I'm not being spiritual. All the capital I have raised on the platform of saying, Lord, I have this project. Where is the money? And what God told me years back is that around a guy that wanted Ishmael to die and looking for water with a jug, but there was a well. And I've found that I've been able to raise funds like that. I needed 30 million, maybe about 12, 13 years back. And I just said, Lord, you've told me that everything around me, everything I need is around me, that how can I get it? Open my eyes. And I called a friend. She said she was ill. I went to her and she said, what are you doing now? I told her what I was doing. She called 5 friends. And in the space of 10 minutes, I had my 30 million. And when I say all, I mean all the projects I've done. That's how I get it. I know many people, most of the panelists will be speaking a lot to the dynamics, but like I said, I'm speaking to the spiritual. Abraham was a farmer. Where should you invest? Abraham was a farmer. He specialized in livestock. Isaac specialized in irrigation, not just farming, irrigation. 2021 is going to be a bit challenging with food security, with food supply. However, it opens up the best opportunities for us to leverage in terms of production. Production is where everybody runs to, but that's not where you get the most in terms of economic returns. But that is responsible for the survival of the remaining value chain. So the processors, the marketers, the distributors, they need this. So irrigation, selling irrigation equipment, however small, not anything big, It's very crucial. Food is going to be expensive next year. Not just expensive, it's not going to be available. So the issue of an Isaac sowed in that land and reaped 100-fold is coming back in 2021. Irrigation is just what you need to do. And after it was primarily a crop farmer, moved from crop into water, into livestock, into the value chain. And value chain is very crucial. Jacob, if you look at the pictures in my slide, the animals that will be to your left, the black pig, you having the piglets plain color, that is what happened there. That was the first genetic modification. So when you hear GMO, I say there's a scriptural reference where you have plain animals given to speckles and reversing the case. It's all in the Bible. Joseph was in the value chain of storage and distribution. Noah, Genesis 8:20 says that Noah began to become the farmer, and he planted a vineyard. He went, and the Bible says he harvested, he produced wine, and he got drunk. So he was into wine production. And before I get here, for you to know what to invest in, I would say ask God. Now, this picture you see here with me in the corn, some 3 days I've been praying, Lord, there's pandemic across the world. They are going to shut down. What should I do? I always ask God, what should I do? In Yoruba, I ask every year, Oluwa, kilomata lo doing, Lord, what will sell this year? Sometimes it may take a week, sometimes it may take 2 weeks. I will hear what to plan. This picture, I heard God said, mop up all the sweet corn seeds in the country. I've been producing sweet corn for about 9-10 years, and I mopped up all the corn seeds. And so 2 weeks into the lockdown, the importer now began to ask me to sell seeds, and I didn't sell seeds. And that singular instruction made us the leading supplier of sweet corn post-COVID lockdown. And when I was writing this book, revising the book, it said, go to the farm, take a picture, put your picture in front of the book. Revelation, you need to farm by revelation. You need to farm by insight. And the book says what they don't teach you in agribusiness school. So many years I've prepared land to grow maybe corn. The particular year I prepared to grow corn. And as I was praying on the land, I always pray on the land before I plant. I do livestock also. And God said in Yoruba, Orile watermelon lo durole. And what that means is that you are standing on the land for watermelon, and I prepared it for corn. And at the end of that year, the watermelon, when we planted, watermelon was what was responsible for a chunk of our income. So as a believer, how do you get in? I tell you this, in John 21:11, God told Peter, cast your net, and he got 150 fish. At some point in time again, he said, cast it to the right, not cast your net again, cast it to the right, specifically right. And along the line, when Jesus needed to pay taxes, Jesus told Peter again that, Peter, go to the river, catch the first fish, open the belly. Peter is a fisherman. They throw the gut of fish away. But he said, open the belly, you will find corn. So for one, he caught. For another one, he said, right, specifically. For another one, first fish. So which out of the value chain will be profitable for you? Except the Lord builds a house, they labor in vain that build it. So you need to ask the Lord. That is what has been responsible for what I did. One of the panelists here in DD, I met her in Ghana 2011. I'm sure she may not remember this. And, she came as a consultant for Feed the Future program. And I just had a conversation with her briefly, like passing question. And I said, how have you sustained the sector? Because I was about giving up. And she said, God told me to stay with Ace Foods, to stay with it. And that was just a lifeline. So I'm saying thank you to Ndidi for that comment. I'm sure she may not remember. And I'll say a big thank you. If you want to get in the agribusiness and you are 9 to 5, please retire before you resign, meaning start before you let go. Thank you so much. God bless.
Thank you. Thank you very much, African farmer. That was quite a great
Thank you.
presentation. You know, I took some key messages from there. You know, you said there are lots of opportunities within this space. What should I invest in? Ask God. Really, really powerful. Ask God. God, what will sell this year? And then you said farm by revelation.
Revelation.
Yes, pray on the land. So thank you so much for those powerful messages. We'll be exploring them further during the question and answer session. So thank you. Our next speaker, thank you. Our next speaker is Abramson.
Wonderful. I think this is visible. Let me know if it's not. But yeah, thank you very much for the invitation to speak. And I think the introduction was a good summary of my experience in relation to African farmers and the agricultural sector in general. So I have lived in rural areas in Africa. I've worked face-to-face with smallholder farmers. And so this is really my focus and passion. So I appreciate the time to talk to you all. So I've titled my presentation, What You Should Build for Farmers Today. And I really want this to be an encouragement to especially entrepreneurs who are considering entering into the agricultural value chain. So I'll go over, I think, some of the big opportunities that I see just from my own experience, mostly in Kenya, but across Africa. So if you look at specifically small farms, smallholder agriculture dominates agriculture in Africa and also Asia, many parts of Asia, many parts of South America, Central America. And overall, worldwide, there's about 500 million smallholder farmers, farming about 1 billion hectares. So 2 hectares or less, as I'm sure many of you know. And just back of the envelope estimates, it's about a $2 trillion market just within smallholder farming. On the output side, and about 100 billion of inputs purchased. So it's a big market. And I think this is an interesting market for any entrepreneur or investor. I think as others have said, it's going to be a more and more important, I think, space in the future as well. So I just wanted to go over what I see as kind of 4 main subsectors or opportunities within agriculture. So you have farm inputs, obviously, that farmers are buying, and you have farm advice, which is a big need for smallholder farmers, many of whom are disconnected to the internet, don't have Google to just ask, hey, what should I be planting, or how should I be taking care of my crop? Finance and payments are a big opportunity as well. I think that's also something that is a real beginning to emerge now. And then market linkages. So I'll get into each one of these and kind of go through what I see as the opportunities. So specifically smallholder farmers and their journey to buying farm inputs, it's usually a small agro retailer. In Kenya, we call them agro vets, that have a limited amount of inputs on the shelf. And there aren't really other, scaled channels that farmers can typically source from. We don't yet have I think a mature online marketplace environment for inputs. And so there's a limited selection. A lot of times they have, the basics, but they wouldn't be able to, for example, buy a drip irrigation kit from their local agro dealer necessarily. A lot of that technology exists, but it's hard for a smallholder farmer to find and to learn about. I think because of that long shelf life in small volumes, it ends up being more expensive just because of that lack of economy of scale. And then there's also the issue of adulteration or counterfeiting products. So that happens as well. So there's issues of trust within that relationship. So I've kind of focused a lot on Twitter and Facebook in terms of examples of just the need in the market right now for some of these services. So if you look, this is from my just desk research on looking for examples in Kenya, but you see a lot of farmers looking for inputs or input companies selling inputs using Twitter and Facebook. Clearly, when you have most farmers still offline, this isn't the best type of a platform. And so just as an example, I think, platforms could exist that are able to reach farmers. Could be a call center, could be SMS, but those are just some examples. I think in terms of specific opportunities within this value chain, so digital marketplaces for inputs could make access to farm inputs more efficient, could greatly expand farmers' ability to source inputs beyond what they can find on the shelf in their local agro dealer. New distribution models would be interesting, rather than just the traditional kind of sitting on the shelf. Obviously, digital technology allows new distribution models. You could think of a Groupon for farm inputs where you could aggregate demand. So just some ideas that I think could be explored. And then you have these cross-cutting kind of opportunities where every agro dealer or retailer basically serves as an agent, or in a sense an extension agent. They often provide advice to farmers. Farmers tend to trust them. What product do I need? They would typically ask their local agro retailer. So there's ways of leveraging that relationship where you could add in those finance and payment services, advice, or bundle services together. So that's just one opportunity that I see in the farm input space. For advice, like I said, I think advice for farmers can be really critical, right? It's an important kind of missing piece a lot of times. If you look at the numbers, definitely the minority of smallholder farmers are actually getting, extension service advice from extension workers. It's definitely much less than 50% of farmers. So the majority of farmers are asking their friends, they're asking their agro retailers, but they don't have official extension service access. So there's, again, an opportunity for digital technologies to come in and provide that. That's what I do at Precision Agriculture for Development. They're a nonprofit that specializes in providing digital advice. And that's a lot of times through SMS or through IVR, sort of simple mobile phone friendly platforms. But there's always that question: who do I trust as a farmer? Who can they trust? What information can they really trust? And just a really low level of data. And I'll get to data. I think data is really important for a lot of these services. Soil samples. What is your soil makeup? That data simply does not exist at a meaningful scale. So most farmers are just kind of taking the blanket solution in terms of recommendations for fertilizer and other inputs. So that's a big need. I think, again, you'll see on Twitter and Facebook, you'll see advice, you'll see farmers looking for advice, farmers giving advice, what is the best kind of fertilizer that I can use for these crops. And these are just in farmer groups. So you'll see this a lot. I think it just shows the opportunity that farmers are looking for advice digitally. Like I said, digital extension is one way of solving that problem. I think satellites are really interesting now. We're getting more and more really amazing data from satellites that's historical back to 20, 30 years. And, that's used right now all over the world in mostly developed countries. But in developing countries, I think, there could be a big advantage to actually incorporating that data. There's some challenges to that. One is, how do you actually locate the exact farm plot without a smartphone, without internet? But even that is something that technology can handle. There's AI algorithms that can basically detect the edges of fields in order to give farmers specific advice about their farm. So that's I think another big opportunity, and tying that advice, for example, to farm inputs would also be a really interesting thing to do. We know some models out there where seed companies are selling their seeds and coupling that seed package to a digital registration, maybe just to verify that this seed is actually not counterfeit. Insurance sometimes is bundled to the seed package. So you could actually think of a scenario where a farmer could sign up for advice coupled to that specific seed through a code on the seed package, right? That's just an example, I think, of things that can be done now with technology. Financial side, I think fintech is a big buzzword. People are always looking at new fintech opportunities. I think in agriculture, there's a really low uptake of digital payments. I'm not sure it's quite 99%. That's probably an overstatement, but it's still very, very cash-based, a lot of these transactions. And that means there's very little data, right? Very little transaction data. And that data can be the foundation of a lot of other services, including loans, insurance, and just, basic, data that can be used for farmers to finance their businesses. So that's very difficult right now, given the fact that everything is mostly, most transactions are still cash-based, meaning that the data is not in a very user-friendly form, if it exists at all, other than a paper receipt. So that's one challenge. I think, again, some more examples on Twitter and Facebook. I think this one on Twitter is, so Kiva is a microfinance institute that gives loans not only to farmers, but a lot of times to farmers. I think this is on this one on Facebook is just somebody looking for loans to finance their business. So again, I think it is a big opportunity. Specific opportunities within this is, again, new data generation models. You could look at new insurance or microcredit models. I think insurance within the smallholder sector in Africa is less than 2% penetration. Very, very low penetration for agricultural insurance. Usually the insurance that's out there is going to be weather-based kind of risk insurance. So if there's a drought or if there's a flood or something weather-related happens within your satellite grid, then you can be reimbursed. Most of the time, it's just for the inputs that you've put in the ground. But obviously, there's a lot more needs in terms of insurance than that. And it's just really hard to meet those needs. I've spoken to several insurance companies, and they all tell me, we just need the data. We don't have the data. So getting that data can really be powerful. Again, cross-cutting opportunities, some kind of point of sale device for agro retailers would actually give data, right? Digitize the data of their purchases, which could then be used to de-risk some of those services, financial services. Digitizing farm payments would basically do the same thing. So there's opportunities there. I think eventually there's going to be a lot more interest from farmers to pay and use digital payments. So that's just something to keep in mind. And then the last kind of focus is where I've been, I guess, the last 3 years, just with my own startup, is with market linkages, right? So farmers typically very isolated, don't have much access to market information. The people that do buy their produce usually buy at the farm gate and are traders, and basically they have an informational advantage. They know the market prices, they know who's buying further downstream the value chain, and so they can basically take advantage of farmers on the price that they pay. So I think a fundamental challenge with that is just visibility. Farmers are almost invisible to anyone outside of that local middleman trader network, right? And so sourcing from farmers outside of that area is very, very difficult. Typically, traders will spend 3 or 4 days scouting around a village or groups of villages before they'll say, okay, send in the truck, we're going to buy 10 tons and take it now. So there's a lot of effort on both sides, a lot of inefficiencies. A lot of that has to do with, one, lack of internet. So in Kenya, farmers have about 20% of farmers have internet access, and that number is much lower in other areas as well. I'm not sure actually what Nigeria is, but I'm sure it's somewhere around that. So that makes it difficult to just build a website or an app and hope farmers will use it. So again, going back to Twitter and Facebook, which only 20% of farmers have access to, but you'll see a lot of this. I have bananas, I'm selling them now and I need a buyer now. Please retweet or please share this on Facebook. And so, basically, farmers are really looking for these types of platforms to emerge. So I think, we're at Farmster, we're basically focusing on a classifieds approach where we just allow farmers to publish. And we could also look at other kind of cross-cutting. So I will summarize the rest here, and then we'll finalize here. So this is my last slide. I'll just take 10 seconds. So I really think, like I said, I think data is really critical to solving a lot of these issues. A lot of these challenges have to do at the end of the day with how much data is available. For input companies to reach farmers, they need to know about farmers. What are they going to need? What are their needs? Output buyers, same idea. So that's, I think, just an image I wanted to end with. And thanks for, again, the opportunity to share.
Thank you very much, Adam. That was very informative indeed. And what struck me about the presentation was the fact that many times when people are thinking about, I want to invest in agriculture, what are the opportunities? They start thinking about, what should I go and plant? And I think your presentation just highlights the fact that there are a huge range of opportunities, all across the value chain. You've highlighted the use of technology and how there are opportunities in various areas to use technology to enhance the whole farming experience and bring value to farmers. So for the tech guys out there who are thinking, how do I get involved in agriculture? I think the powerful message from you is, hey, agriculture needs technology. We can use technology to drive innovation in agriculture, the digital market space, payment services, getting advice to farmers, new models for insurance and microcredit. It's a whole range of opportunities. So thank you very much for your insights there. So ladies and gentlemen, we'll be moving on to our next speaker. Our next speaker is from Farm Crowdy. Many of you know Farm Crowdy. It's a venture that has really used technology within the agriculture space to revolutionize that sector. It was started by a guy called Onyeka Aruma, and today we have Olushola Oyawale, who is the Chief Operating Officer of Farm Crowdy, that will be sharing some insights with us via video. Shola is a disruptive innovator. He has a bachelor's degree in civil engineering and also has a master's in business administration. He's very, very experienced in the area of startup businesses. And indeed, he's been chief operating officer for at least 3 ventures that I know of across different industries. Currently, he's at Farm Crowdy, where he's been a big part of the success of that venture. Now, as you know, Farm Crowdy is Nigeria's first digital agriculture platform that empowers smallholder farmers by providing them access to finance, smart farming techniques, and indeed access to the market. So let's hear from Shola Oyawale.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It's my privilege and a rare opportunity to be on this event of the summit this year, Kingdom Summit. It's no doubt the world has experienced several turns of events that has reshaped how we do meetings and how this summit has been, really organized. But first and foremost, it's to thank God for the gift of life, for those who have made it through the pandemic so far, and also to pray for every family and everyone who's lost someone over this course of the pandemic, that they would continue to find peace. But one thing that remains is life is continuing. Business is finding its shape across several industries and sectors gradually, like we're all aware. But then, everything has a bit of blended approach, meaning virtually and physically. I'll be speaking today to the all-important subject or topic around how investors and aspiring entrepreneurs can take advantage of the opportunities available in the agricultural value chain. Before I dive in, my name is Shola Oyawale. I am the Chief Operating Officer for Farm Crowdy. Farm Crowdy is Nigeria's first and foremost agri-tech company. We started out about 4 years exactly ago to tackle 3 major issues that the smallholder farmer in Nigeria deals with, which then were access to finance, access to smart farming skills, and access to markets. But over time, we've pivoted the business, and today we are working to strengthen activities across the agri value chain in terms of aggregation, structured finance, micro insurance, marketing, technology, and data. And it's important to note that we can't get enough of food produced. There can never be a situation where we deal with excess of food production in Nigeria, because over our local consumption, there is opportunities to continue to export. I'll talk about a few facts about our growing population, and which continues to grow daily, estimated to be about 202 million. About 2050, that is the projection for our population as a nation. Feeding this nation, feeding Nigeria alone in itself shows there is a lot to be achieved in the agricultural value chain. And some of my conversations this morning will be around where the opportunities lie for investors. Like we know, investment chases value, as it were, the values that exist where they exist and how you can plug into them will be some of the things I'll be talking about over the course of this short speech that I'll be making. For the production to continue and match the levels at which will be sufficient in feeding Nigeria, let alone talk about the opportunities for export, investment is going to be key. And for that reason and that purpose is why we're having this conversation, so that we can do the right linkages where they exist to ensure that we can sustain food production for this great nation. The agricultural value chain, no doubt, has several aspects, and it's almost impossible to exhaust each and every one of them. I mean, even if you decide to stay on one value chain, the spectrum is so wide, you might not be able to exhaust it alone as a player, as it were. From harvesting to, from core production to harvesting, logistics that has to do with transportation, primary processing and storage, distribution, packaging and handling, secondary production, which is, processing on another level, and, markets where wholesale and retail activities happen. These are some of value chain activities where value, can really be extracted and for which investments would be expected to chase. I'll speak about some of the opportunities that I see in some of these value chains, some that we've taken advantage of, some that we're probably even looking to take advantage of as a business, and see if you would make sense of some of them or get a lead, from some of these to then say, oh, okay, maybe I should go into that way in adding or lending my effort, to sustaining food production for Nigeria. In terms of production, the aspects of animal feed production, fertilizer, crop protection, input financing for farmers, underproduction, that's like a huge area where input is required to drive activities, on the production level. So if you're hoping to get into production and not exactly looking to till the ground or cultivate or plant a crop or own a farmland, animal feed is one area to get into in terms of the production. Fertilizer is also another. Crop protection is also another area worth looking at. Input financing for farmers is also huge. As a business, we've played in this area for some time, and we see that the opportunities there, are inexhaustible, as it were. So if you're not looking at production, there is the harvest and transportation, and this is where a lot lies in terms of loss, that we face as a nation. Post-harvest loss has been with us for quite a while, and it's not gone away yet. A lot of participants in this space are doing a lot to ensure that post-harvest losses are reduced as much as possible, but a lot still happens there. And in terms of the logistics between farm gate to the market also, a lot happens in there. So harvesting equipment, goods in transit insurance, aggregation centers to ensure that farmers are able to get places closest to their farm gates to sell off their produce is also another interesting area to play. As a company, we've got aggregation centers scattered across the nation, And what we've tried to do is stay as closest as possible to farmers to ensure that before their goods start to perish post-harvest, we can aggregate to take them, off them quickly. Opportunities exist in there. Transportation also lies in there. Primary processing and storage, I can't overemphasize this. This is where additional value is gotten. And this is where the majority of, the profit margins you would ever boast of in this, industry comes from. From storage facilities, to processing equipment, to meat processing and packaging equipment, to agricultural technology that aids, the Internet of Things in ensuring that primary processing and storage, gets more effective. A lot of opportunities exist in there. And right from here, I'll talk about distribution, packaging, and handling. A lot goes in here. For some of our produce to be able to leave Nigeria to other countries, for example, there are certain certifications and regulations that need to be met. So licensing, franchising, digital technology as it supports, logistics is also a huge aspect of the value chain as it relates to distribution to look into. Wholesale and retail. Ultimately, this is where we've got quite a number of players currently. And I dare say, we can't have too many people really playing in here, really. Every time we get into a project, we're always looking to start out with an off-taker who would guarantee, the offtake of this produce. So for everyone who's going into wholesale or retail, as it were, the market there, the potential there is huge and continues to remain, relevant. But I mean, a bit of technology to aid what's happening in here could be e-commerce, which is what we do also today through our business called Farm Crowded Foods, which is e-commerce for food. A lot is going on in there. Imports, exports, be a go-between between someone who's selling and someone who is buying, whether locally or internationally. And more importantly, commodities trading. There are a few exchanges today that are also bridging the gap in making sure, access to market is a lot more seamless. However, in considering these value chains, I would like to put it to you that there are a few things you must look into before you get into any aspect of the value chains. Number one is ensure you do a due diligence. It's very important to know the people behind a business venture than just being carried away, by simulations that are given to you about what's possible. There's been an era in Nigeria where some people were selling real estate in the name of trying to promote agriculture, where they tell you this expanse of land exists somewhere, you can plant, plantain on it and get XYZ from it. And, people rushing only to find out that, look, the soil was not the best for planting, or the variety that was planted wasn't the right one for the soil type, or the yields fell short of what their expectations were. And then at the end of the day, what they are left with is the land, real estate at the end of the day. But it's important to ensure that you do your due diligence. Know the persons, the individuals behind whatever the activity it is you're willing to invest in. Know them. The persons are more important, than the opportunity that exists in it as well. If they have a track record, check. If anyone can vouch, for, whatever it is they've done in the past, ensure that, you get all of that and ensure your due diligence is done. Get necessary contracts, get a legal person to look through them and ensure that whatever it is you're getting into, you're coming from a place of comfort, having carried out some form of due diligence. For me personally, I don't invest in things I don't know about. So I try to do research if it's not my, comfortable area. But even at that, if the research and the analysis are not sitting pretty well with me, I probably, or most, probably won't even go into that investment. That would be my second advice, which is invest in your beliefs. Because this is agriculture, don't go short. Mid to long term, is what you should be aiming for, and then keep up with updates and ensure you know exactly what is happening with your investment. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. That was another great presentation from Shola Oyawale. So, I mean, Shola is basically, again, stressed the fact that there are opportunities across various sectors of the agri value chain. Yes, you can go into production, but Shola stressed the fact that there are opportunities downstream or upstream, as it were. The opportunities in harvesting, the opportunities in transportation, huge opportunities in terms of processing of agricultural inputs. Indeed, he made the point that the further you go, the more processing you can get, the more value that you get there. He also made the point about storage. So you could decide that your play in agriculture is going to be about providing storage and helping to deal with the issue of post-harvest transport losses. Of course, he mentioned the wholesale retail space is still wide open. And that's the fascinating thing about agriculture. So many ways to get involved. I really like the way he closed, talking about before you go in, do your due diligence. Great advice. Know if you're going in with people or making an investment with someone, make sure you know the person that you're investing in. Make sure the person has character capital, very important. And then he said, invest in your beliefs. Of course, all backed by God's guidance and divine revelation as to the area in which to invest. So let's move on to our final speaker. Our final speaker is Mrs. Ndidi Uwuneli. So I invite Mrs. Ndidi Uwuneli.
Thank you so much. And thank you to Tola Adeyemi and the entire team for this wonderful opportunity. I am a big fan of the Kingdom Summit and the leaders behind it. So it's really an honor to join you today. I have a presentation I'm going to give, and I've been asked to focus on scaling. I thank all the previous speakers before me who have definitely covered a lot of ground. So I got into the agriculture and food landscape because of this picture, which you can see on the screen. And this was a picture that followed me around the world. People would tell me, oh, you're African. Oh, there are starving children in Africa. This was the face of Africa, starving children. Now, as a Christian and someone who grew up in Enugu, this picture was alien to me. I actually did not believe that this was what God ordained for us, and we're naturally endowed for agricultural excellence. So 10 years ago, my husband and I started Sahel Consulting, which works across Africa, transforming the agriculture and nutrition landscape in the region. We work on a range of long-term and short-term projects. We're currently implementing the Advancing Local Dairy Development in Nigeria program, Dean in 5 states in Nigeria, ensuring backward integration into the dairy sector. We're commercializing yam and cassava seed systems through Yiswa and Basics in Ghana and Nigeria. And then we do a lot of short-term projects, strategy projects, market entry projects. As you heard in the intro, I'm also the co-founder of a food company called Ace Foods, which is 11 years old. And through my work, trying to help entrepreneurs scale over the last 25 years through Faith Foundation, Leap Africa, and more recently through my own ventures, realize that we all face a number of opportunities. The previous speakers have underscored how many opportunities there are in this sector, but many entrepreneurs in this sector are struggling to scale. They have challenges accessing funding, poor linkages to markets, weak brands, inefficient business models, limited access to data, unfavorable policies, and policies are really critical for our sector because of the standards set by NAFDAC and SON, but also because of the flip-flopping of policy. So you invest in rice and tomorrow the government changes the policy. Difficulty finding talent, which has been my #1 challenge, and also poor networking and support systems. So I decided to spend last year actually researching what it takes for companies to scale, and spent a lot of time talking to 80 entrepreneurs across Africa in the food and agriculture landscape who are scaling. And I want to talk about some of the critical realities and the promising trends from my research. One critical reality is climate change. None of the previous speakers have talked about it, but this year in Nigeria, we have droughts in some states, we had flooding in others. At least 5 states had serious flooding challenges. Climate change is real and it does affect the food and agriculture landscape. Previous speakers have talked about the high post-harvest losses, limited processing, high rates of malnutrition. We have serious infrastructure, talent, and financing gaps. And the infrastructure gaps are opportunities as well, as we've heard, with logistics, Kobo 360 and Lorry and so many other companies have come in to fill this gap. The poor regulatory environment, the serious gender inequity. I mean, I'm the only woman in this panel. There's a huge gender gap in the agriculture and food landscape. And we have women at the lowest levels of production and retail, but in between, not enough women playing a critical role. And then the regional and global trade dynamics, where people still export primary products, unprocessed products from Africa, and then we import processed products into the continent. But there's some promising trends, lots of digitization, and some of the speakers have talked about it, over 400 digital innovations on the continent, lots of improvements in seed systems, and systems across the board, lots of young people getting to the sector, a growing middle class, which means that people are more discerning about the type of food they eat and more interested in healthy diets and a focus on equity. And by this, I mean Africans for Africa, Africans really taking a hold of this sector. So through my research, I came up with 6 critical components for businesses that will scale. So if you're going to start a business or grow a business, you have to have these 6 components. And the book will be released early next year. It's being published by Routledge. It was supposed to be released this year, but with COVID, the publisher in the UK has been slowed down. So the first is that your business model has to be demand driven with measurable value addition. And this is so important. Many of us come up with ideas. When we started Ace Foods, our business was going to be focused on jams and pepper sauces and baby food. And we realized average Nigerian did not eat jam, papaya jam, pineapple jam, abalumo jam. They just didn't eat jam for breakfast. My family ate jam. People I knew ate jam, but millions of people did not eat jam. That's how we had to pivot to spices, which was our year 3 strategy. So it has to be demand driven. It has to leverage technology, data, and innovation. COVID-19 has shown us if your business model does not leverage technology, it's obsolete. Your business has to shape the ecosystem from day one. And this is the food and agriculture sector, but every sector in general. Look at the policy environment, how it supports, enables your business to thrive, and if it doesn't, how you can help shape it. Business models that scale are cost efficient. They have dynamic systems and structures. They have compelling branding and they have a story. Those who have scaled in this continent know how to package themselves. Farm Proudie has a story. They've learned how to package themselves. African Farmer has a story. He knows how to tell his story. And finally, you have to build in resilience into your DNA. COVID was one shock. Climate change is another shock, and there are going to be many more shocks. So if you're going to thrive in the food and agriculture landscape, you have to ensure that you build in resilience. And so I'm going to just take each of these really quickly because I'm giving you a summary of the book without in 10 minutes. You really have to ensure that you really think through how you can leverage technology. And so many examples. Twiga is one example. Please look them up in Kenya. They're doing amazing things. And they've raised $60 million, over $60 million, just linking farmers and fruit sellers across Nairobi. Cow Tribe is another one that uses cell phones to ensure that farmers can immunize their cows and ensure that they're vaccinated. Another very interesting example I profile in my book is Manele Pets, and I loved interviewing this entrepreneur. He wanted to export meats from South Africa, high-end meats. And he quickly realized that he couldn't meet the global standards. But guess what? That people abroad were willing to pay 3 times what they pay for meat on pet food because they pay more for their pets than they do for themselves. So he pivoted to pet food, and now he sells in 12 global countries. And he's selling exotic pet food and is offering private label, and people are paying. It's amazing. Now, talent is a key issue, and I talked about this, what is a hindrance to scaling. And you have to, from day one, think about your talent model. Think about your boards of directors. Think about how you're going to outsource. Think about who you're going to partner with. And there are lots of interesting models, but talents. If you don't have the right skills around you in the food and agriculture sector, you will struggle. Then you have to leverage innovation. And I mentioned that there's so many innovations available. And I think one of the previous speakers talked about the innovations around financial inclusion, advisory, market linkages, even weather information. That's a huge opportunity to provide to farmers, crop protection, big data, so much. There are people using sensors and bioengineering and mobile applications and advanced technology. I mean, leasing cell phones. We're going to have 625 million cell phones in our continent. How do you use cell phones to offer services in this sector? Branding is critical, not just in terms of how you package yourself, the name you choose, the logos, the taglines, the brand promise, your online presence. And one interesting example is Hello Tractor. He's like, built such a strong reputation, and he calls himself the Uber of tractors. Now, he doesn't own any equipment. What he offers is software for tractor manufacturers. And he has been profiled all over the world. What does he do? He definitely positions himself. For all the tractor manufacturers, they see him as a go-to person. He started off in Nigeria, and now he's in different parts of Africa and in Asia through his business. There's another one called Java Foods. And she has done a really great job with nutritious food in Zambia, positioning her company as quick, easy, and nutritious, and her brand is called Easy. Now, financing, everybody asks me, financing, there's no money. And I tell you, there's more money available in this sector, and we cannot find companies to invest in. Our sister company, Sahel Capital, manages the Fund for Agriculture Financing, the private equity fund. They're struggling to find investee companies because most of our companies are not investment ready. We don't have strong financial systems, credibility, a strong track record, simple business models. I'll encourage you to check out Nourishing Africa because you'll see so many opportunities for funding. And the same people keep on getting funding. In fact, yesterday, I saw a list of people who just won another prize. And I said, they just won 3 prizes last week. And the challenge is, once you have cracked the nut of how to package yourself, you have to even turn money away. There are many incubators across the continent, many accelerators. And then you have to shape your ecosystem. Think about the policy, the culture. Think about who the enablers are in your ecosystem, who the beneficiaries are, who are the opponents, and who the competitors are from day one. And think about how to influence them. And you can influence them through your industry associations, your value chain associations, and by partnering with others to amplify your voice. There's a very good example in Rwanda called Africa Improved Foods, and you should check them out. I mean, they produce 7 tons an hour. And when I went to their factory, I was just blown away. I said, we have so much to learn from those who know how to influence the ecosystem. And then finally, you have to build your resilience. 43% of businesses never reopen after a disaster. And this year has been tough. But if you build in resilience into your ecosystem by how you hedge your risk, how you adapt to new realities, how agile you are, you can survive and thrive. And it requires investing in insurance, managing your costs, building saving buffers, and also thinking through different scenarios. So as I round up, I really have a sense of urgency. I think that some of our speakers, have shared how Nigeria is actually in a food crisis. And those of you who don't realize that probably are not going to the supermarket, I personally have seen the cost of food skyrocket, between 20 and 30% increase. So we have to increase the accessibility and availability of nutritious food. Nigerians spend 56% of their household income on food. This is unacceptable. India is 30%. So this requires innovation. So we started a company called Nourishing Africa in the COVID, and I encourage all of you to go on nourishingafrica.com. It is set up to help you start and grow your business. There's resources for experts, there's resources for networking, there's resources for funding. And in the next few weeks, we are launching a grant scheme to help entrepreneurs who are already in the sector, who are struggling with COVID, pivot. So please look out for the opportunities to recover and grow your business. So I'll round up by saying, I have a quote that is my current mantra. It says, if I tell you my dream, you might forget it. If I act on my dream, perhaps you'll remember it. But if I involve you, it becomes your dream too. So the message for all of us is we have to dream of a country that can feed itself. I start off with a picture of starving children. And this is the picture I want all of us to work towards. Healthy, vibrant children who live full and meaningful lives and who achieve their highest potential because they're well nourished, because food is affordable and available, and because they can essentially live and thrive in our country. And it's a collective action for all of us to partner, to share knowledge, to share resources, and to truly transform this sector. Thank you so much. God bless you all.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Ndidi. That was a really, really inspiring presentation. And, inspiring in several respects. The sense of urgency that really got to me, the sense of urgency that we have to deal with the issues that we face in agriculture. The fact that so many of our farmers are small scale farmers that's not going to solve the agricultural problem that we face into the future. We need our farmers and those involved in agriculture to achieve scale. And what Ndidi has outlined is how to go about achieving that scale. And she's given several pieces of advice there in terms of what to do. The other striking comment that Ndidi made was the fact that if you know how to package yourself, if you've got a viable business, you will even be in a position where you're having to turn money away. So I want all our aspiring entrepreneurs to really think about that, because many people, as has been said earlier, keep talking about funding, funding, funding. Well, you've heard from someone who's involved in agriculture, who's involved in financing, that there's an abundance of funding available. There's money that's looking for opportunities to invest, but can't find them. So great presentations from our 4 panelists. We'll now go into questions and answers. Joining me in responding to the questions will be 3 of our panelists. So we'll have African Farmer, we'll have Adam Abramson, and then Ndidi Uneli, who will deal with the questions. So let me start, and this time, Ndidi came last, and I will start her first with the question. So Ndidi, thanks so much for your presentation. This conference, the themes are innovation, collaboration, and transformation. We've spoken a lot about innovation in agriculture, and you've spoken about scale. Can you just touch on this issue of collaboration? What are the opportunities for participants within the agricultural sector to actually collaborate in order to make a real difference and achieve scale? Could you share your perspective on that?
Yeah, thank you so much. There's definitely no way any player can work alone in this sector. This is a sector that requires ecosystem actors to collaborate. And so there's so many ways. I'll tell you, for example, through Ace Foods, which is an agro-processing company, we work with all sorts of players. We work with nonprofits who help us with farmer organization and farmer support. We work with organizations like Partners in Food Solutions, which help us with our innovations and our product development. We work with financing organizations such as Africa Enterprise Challenge Fund, AECF. I encourage all of you to check them out. And then we work with suppliers and distributors. I mean, we are mostly B2B, so we sell to companies like Unilever, flour mills. Those are large companies, but they also help us with our innovation and new product development. So the amazing thing is you can never work alone in this sector. You're dependent on so many other players, from your supply chain to your distribution network to even your customer base. And with each step, you actually need industry players. Even your competitors become partners, especially when you're setting standards. When we started, there was no standard for ginger. Ginger is a huge product in the Nigerian context. We export ginger. SON didn't have a standard. We had to partner with our competitors to set the standard in the industry. So literally every step of the way, collaboration is key. And it requires humility. It requires an ability to listen. And it requires really the understanding that it's an ecosystem. When one part of the chain is broken, it affects the entire chain. Where there's an inefficiency, it affects you. So you cannot assume that you can do everything. You have to work with others.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that. So you cannot walk alone. This is not something to be done on your own. Every part of it requires collaboration. Adam, there's a question here around modern means of agriculture. I don't know if you can help us with that. It says, can the agric experts advise our society on emerging city farming in view of diminishing land space, given the industrial revolution?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I think within urban areas, most of the, I think, population growth, a lot of it will occur in urban areas. So feeding that population will be a big opportunity. And I'm in Israel, and in Israel, we're very, very intensive in our agriculture. So we do a lot of greenhouse production, and even hydroponic production, where you're really just using very little resources to grow a large amount of food. And I think especially for urban areas, that's very interesting, and the technologies are there. It's just a matter of getting that market around that. So yeah, that's something that I do see as an opportunity. I know in Kenya there are some producers that are getting into that direction as well. So yeah, definitely. Mm-hmm.
Right. Thank you. Ndidi, do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, there are lots of opportunities across the board, and many, even in our context, in the Nigerian context, you see so much innovation and so much opportunity for technology. And I like the time Adam took to explain to people. Many people come to me and say, I want to get into agriculture, and they just focus on primary production. But what they don't realize is that there are opportunities to leverage technology across the board to address the inefficiencies. And so many of our young people can actually come in and help us leverage technology, from commercializing all the great research from research institutions. We actually work with aeroponics on yam seeds. And yam seed systems are amazing. And even in Nigeria, soilless farming, urban farming, we're starting to see pockets of that, but we're not seeing it at the level, and we're not seeing the scaling that we'd expect to really make a dent. So I encourage more people to on Nourishing Africa, just click on technology, and it will show you all the available technology and which firms are currently offering them, so that you can partner with others to scale their innovations and inventions.
Right. Thank you. Thank you very much. African farmer, I'd like you to deal with the question around mentorship. So there are many people who are looking to go into agriculture, and they're saying, hey, how do I get the right mentorship to help me on this journey? Could you share your perspectives on that?
Like I tell people, I would rather do coaching than doing mentorship. And I would rather get somebody who is looking at starting, and get in the field with the person. Not everybody can coach. Very few people can coach. In agriculture, you can not effectively coach in proxy. Okay. I use the word effectively. You can do that, but with this environment where, the infrastructure is not just together. So especially many people look into the production. And really, the processors need quality inputs. And so the processors are complaining we don't have inputs, and yet we are hearing of wastage. So the processors need things, but the farmers don't produce that. But beyond that, across the value chain, most youths and most people coming in, even investors, don't understand the fact that they need to be coached. As far as this country is concerned, I've met a couple of, like last year, between October and December, I met 4 major industrialists and top-notch captain of the industries, that you mentioned the names. 4 of them have lost 1.3 billion. They came to me to consult. 1.3 billion. When they're coming into agribusiness, they just assume they've succeeded in insurance and banking, I can manage, and they come in. And unfortunately, many of them rush into production. Yeah. And so coaching is crucial, because you need people who, in any value chain you're looking at, you need people who have gone through. In Nigeria, You can do that in Europe, in Asia, and get away with it. As far as Nigeria is concerned, there's the Nigerian dynamics, not the Nigerian factor. The Nigerian dynamics that you have to contend with. And as simple as when you are scaling in the rural communities, it's a different ball game dealing with mindsets, dealing with religious backgrounds. These are things you don't get in the business schools. So, as simple as, many people may not believe this, but our realities are different. As simple as buying combine harvesters to want to harvest your rice, and in the communities, the equipment that used to work, that worked, get to the farm and don't work again. And for days and days, the thing don't work. And eventually, however strange, a prophet is passing by and said, oh, God told me that there's something here not working. Buy 2 crates of minerals and handkerchiefs and call women and support them and just give them to celebrate. And they say, start the equipment, and you hear the equipment is not starting. And they say, start it, and you start it again after 4 days, and it starts in minutes. This is real life. And when they asked that, they now said, oh, so how will this work on small projects? And guess what? The women diabolically stopped the machine from working, however controversial that is, but that's something that happened to us. They said the reason why the machines didn't work was because they felt it would deprive them of their 1 acre, 2 plots harvesting that they do. So it was when they found out that the machines cannot do 10 acres, even 20 acres, but would do hundreds of acres because it was a big combine harvester. That was when the combine harvester started working. But a lot of losses have been incurred. And there are so many stories that I've experienced because I've operated more in the production value chain. So that's where coaching. And in many cases, we just go there and just advise them to do community engagement. And when you do community engagement, you don't have all this trouble. So coaching is very key. And for people who can mentor, I would advise, many people need to open up more. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for that. And, I guess in the nourishingafrica.com, which you've referred us to, is also a site where people can get online mentoring, as it were, because it has so much information in it regarding funding, training, support, etc. In terms of this issue of, I don't know, Adam, do you have any other perspective to add on mentoring or advice for people just looking to start up in the agriculture space?
So I think, from my experience in Kenya running Farmster, I see a lot of energy with youth, wanting to get into the tech that's available, to use their phones and to use their energy, I think, for creating value in these value chains. And we've done some trainings in among smallholder farmers, and just seen a lot of excitement there. So I think my perspective is more on engaging with groups, engaging with communities, and getting them aware of what's out there in terms of whether it's a new production technology. And I think, rather than like creating a one-on-one coaching experience, I think our perspective is more how we can create something that can scale and empowering the systems that are already in place. And like I mentioned before, I think agro retailers are really in place to potentially create that at a pretty high scale. But there's just, most of them don't have the capacity, right? They just, they're not agronomists, they're business people. And so there might be ways of even looking at that model. and providing an extra kind of training boost to reach 100 farmers each for every retailer. But yeah, I think it's coaching and mentoring is super important when you're getting into a new farming venture. So
okay. Yeah. All right. So thank you very much for that. We're moving towards the end of our session. So if I could just ask each of you to, give what would be the one biggest piece of advice that you would give to aspiring entrepreneurs and investors who are listening in on this call and saying to themselves, I understand there's an issue. I want to get involved, and I understand the range of opportunities. Now, let me get involved. What would be the one piece of advice that you would give them? In a sense, your closing counsel to them. If I could start with African farmer.
Well, I would say you need to develop capacity, not to leverage on the opportunity. Yeah, I just wrote a book, Farming by Revelation. It's spiritual and business. Get the book. Indeed, he has a book on social enterprise. Get that book. Because in African agriculture, you must have a social enterprise mindset to be able to navigate these challenges. If it's strictly for profit, well, I stand to be corrected, but it has not worked. So because you need to reach out, and that's social, or have a very huge component of CSR in your business models. But outside that, if you are going anything along the value chain outside production, capacity is more important than the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Adam, what would your closing piece of advice?
Yeah, I mean, I could speak from my own personal experience and just kind of shifting from academics to entrepreneurship and founding a company. And I know that at that moment when I decided, it was pretty daunting, to get into a new venture where, I just didn't have the experience. I had a lot of knowledge, but not the experience. And so I think, you have to kind of trust, obviously pray and trust God and step out. I think the first step is always going to be the most daunting. Just going out and trying something. And you don't have to try at a massive scale. You don't have to put everything that you have into it. You can do a trial. You can try for one season, trying something new, or and that's, but just taking that first step. And then the other one would be just to surround yourself, like African Farmer was saying, with people who do have the experience, resources, and people who have done it before, and can guide you in that process.
Thank you so much for that. Ndidi.
Yes, I'll say three things. I think you can make money in this sector, and I think there are so many white spaces. There are lots of opportunities for all of you listening to get into the sector, but you have to decide your level of involvement. People come to me all the time and say, my father left a farm in Ogun State and I want to revive it. I'm like, are you going to leave your day job? If you don't have the time, become a silent investor, right? Partner with others who have the time, who are going to give it 110% of their time. You have to figure out your spectrum of involvement, the amount of risk, time, and energy you have for this sector. And it's like any other sector. If you're going to do it, you have to do it with everything you have. If you're going to do it well, you're going to have to put in 110%. But there's so many ways to engage in this sector, and there's so many opportunities. And so I would encourage you to first do some internal assessment of your own appetites, your own energy, and your own talents, and your own appetite for risk. The second is, once you figure that out, there's so many resources. In Nigeria, we have over 30 research institutions. I would recommend two that are very strong: IITA, which is in Ibadan, and NRCRI. They all have advisory services. We've helped them set up seed systems, organizations, Umudike Seeds and Go Seeds. And they're willing to help you if you're going to go into primary production. Don't go in it alone. With soil testing, with access to the right inputs, with agronomic practices, African Farmer can help. Get support, get resources. And then if you're not into primary production, but you want to go into processing, there's so many other organizations that can support you. Go on nourishingafrica.com, search, and then don't use your own money. As much as possible, de-risk. Take advantage of an accelerator, an incubator, business plan competitions. There's so many, especially for young Africans to take advantage of, so that you can actually experiment and take risks with someone else's money if you're going to do it full time. It also allows you to learn by trial and error and not to expose yourself too much. And finally, from a spiritual perspective, I think God is calling more of us to enter the ag and food sector. There's no reason why Nigerians should be going to bed hungry at night. There's no reason why 57% of our household income should be spent on food. And want to challenge more of you to get into the sector as financiers, as tech providers, as consultants, as supply chain aggregators. There's so many opportunities for you. Partner with others, be humble, commit to the long term, and you'll see the impact, not just in terms of the bottom line to your business, but the impact on lives. And ultimately, that's what we're called to be here on this earth, is a change agent. You can be a change agent in the sector. So God bless you all, and thanks for this opportunity.
Thank you so much, Ndidi. That's an excellent wrap up to the session. I don't think there's anything more for me to say other than to thank our panel of speakers. So I really thank Adam Abramson. I thank African Farmer. I thank you, Ndidi. I thank Shola Oyawale. It's been a great session. Thank you, everyone.